Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a new form to be able to add suppliers. So we can see that obviously I've got my 5 tables here, and with suppliers, if I look at the structure of suppliers, you'll see that we've got 4 fields. One of these is an ID number, and the numbers, as you can see, are all sequential. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I'm adding a new one, I want to make sure that I can actually automatically generate the new ID number. So, close my form down. Okay, so to create my form, I go to create, but I want to use this time, I want to use a form design. Okay, you can either use form design or you can use blank form. They basically do the same thing, but you're left with just a blank canvas in effect to be able to draw what you actually need to do. I'll know from looking at the structure that there were 4 fields that I needed to add. And so, if I look, I've got text box, not to be confused with label, by the way, because I use label for headings, but I'm just going to add in 4 of these text boxes. I'm going to just use the boxes on there as a bit of a guideline, so I can put them all in a relatively neat manner. If you want to play around with it afterwards, you can. So there are 4 of these. Now, so I just need to double check again what my fields were. If you go to design view, right? Okay. Now, so if I look here, so supplier, supplier ID is going to be a number. Then we've got 2 text fields, and then we've got delivery days. Okay. Now, what delivery days looks like, if I look at this, delivery days, 1, 2, 3. So that's just basically a number, which it'll tell us in the brief, hopefully, about what if there's any validation has to be on that. Now, so if I go back to my form, now, so I've got my text boxes. The only other thing that I'll need on here is, if I go to, see the form design tools, this little panel at the top, I can get my design tools by clicking on there. So form tools design. And the only other thing is a button. So the XXXX is a button, and I'm just going to plop that in at the bottom. Now, I don't want to do anything just yet with that, because obviously what I'll need to do is I'll need to code a macro that's going to actually kick in whenever the button is clicked. So I'm just going to draw the button and then click cancel for the time being. Okay, now, by the way, another thing that you can do if you really want to, rather than just having a submit button, you can actually put in a cancel button as well. And actually, the cancel button, if you go to form operations, cancel button would just be to close the form. So actually, if I go form operations and close, and I'm just going to change the text to cancel, next, finish, and there we've got a cancel button. So we can play around with the layout of it at a later point. Now, with the text boxes that I've put in, it's put in a little label alongside, and in the labels you can actually put in what the field names actually are. So if I go supplier ID, I can change the text here to supplier, and the next was supplier telephone number. Now, you notice that that text was a little bit long there, so what I might do is I might actually just drag using the, see the little black dot that's at the top left corner? If I click on that, I should be able to grab it and just drag it along a little bit. But I might want it to keep it tidy, just align everything else the same. And And then the last one was just delivery days, wasn't it? So let's see, supplier telephone number and delivery days. So delivery days. Okay, now if I want to, back to design up here, so Form Tools Design, I can put in a label, so that's with the AA, to just say add a supplier, because that's what the purpose of the form actually is, to add a supplier. Now see, it's given me a little error, but don't worry about that, it's fine, it's not actually relevant. And I can go to Format if I want, make that bigger, maybe make it bold, italic, whatever you want, change the font of it. If you want to, you can do things like change the background color and things like that, but actually I don't think you get any marks for that. So therefore, but actually, well, yeah, maybe I might do, actually just for the sake of choose something light. You never know, you might be able to pick up a couple of marks for doing the design of it a little bit. But anyway, so we've got a form as it stands at the moment, and so we've got this supplier ID, supplier telephone number, and delivery days. Now at the moment, these are all unbound, and that basically means they're not linked to anything. So what we need to do is, we need to, first of all, work out how to do the supplier ID. So we're going to save this for the moment. We're just going to go F or M, new supplier, because obviously giving things sensible names with the right prefix is important. So there's FRM new supplier in here, and what we're going to do now is we're going to see if we can create or generate for us the supplier ID based on the contents of TBL supplier. Now I'll need to close this before I make my query. So I'm going to go to create, query design, and obviously I'm concerned with TBL supplier and nothing else. Okay, so TBL supplier, and what do I want to do? All I want to do is count return the maximum value that is currently in the supplier ID field. Because if they're allocated sequentially, as in one after the other, it means that obviously we create a new one. We want to take the biggest number that's currently there and then add one to that. And so the formula for that, very simple, is max. Okay, and max gives us the maximum of something. Now max takes a pair of brackets after it, but what goes inside the brackets? Well, the field name that I'm looking at. So which field name am I concerned with? I'm concerned with supplier ID. Now, as we should remember from some of the previous activities, that when I refer to a field name in one of these functions, I need to make sure that I put square brackets around it. So if I go supplier ID, close my square brackets, now that's what it looks like at the moment. So I've got max, a round bracket, square bracket, supplier ID, and then close our square bracket and a round bracket. Now at the moment what that would do, if I looked at this, if I run, it says 5, because that's basically because the biggest number that's in supplier ID is 5. So if I go back to design view, all I do is very simply, I just go plus 1, and then that'll give me 1 higher than what that previous number actually was. The other thing that I can do is that where it says EXPOR1, I can change that to something more meaningful. I don't have to, but it's always a good idea to give it something meaningful. So I'm going to call it new num. Obviously, this is like a variable, so basically then I'm going to pass, and so therefore I'm going to just call this new num, all one word. So if I run this now, it says new num 6, and basically when I run the form for the first time, that is what I want the new number to actually be. So I need to save the query, and I'm going to call this just QRY new num. Click OK, and then now there's my query in there. And the only purpose of that query purely is to get the maximum number. So I've closed the query down, so I've just got my supplier's form open, and I want to get that field to, by default, appear in this box. And so what I need to do though, I need to get the form properties up. So if anywhere in the background, if I just right click, I'll see that I've got form properties. And if I click on that, now, the very top, if you go to make sure that it says form there. If it says anything else, then you'll need to change the drop down so that it says form. But the first thing that you should see is it says record source. And this is basically, if you have a table or a query, that this is bound to. And we want to bind it, we want to tie it to the new num query. So if I look at the drop down, I can actually pick my query new num, so QRY new num, and make that the record source, that ties the whole form to the query to work out the new number. And that's what I want to do. Once I've done that, it means that I can go back. I don't have to keep this open, the property sheet, by the way, so I might just close it. And all I have to do here is, I just have to type in equals new num. And the reason why this will work is because it will pick up that new num is a field which exists in the query that I've tied the form to. And now what it should see, if I just save it there for a second, and now the thing is, I know this has worked because it's already put the square brackets around it by default, which is okay, it shows that it's worked. And if I go to form view, there we'll see that actually when I open up the form, straight away, the 6 is already in there, because that's the new number that I'm going to actually use in the for the ID. So anyway, so that's that bit solved. And now the only other things to do are, before we start doing the macro, are we need to make sure that we have validated the text boxes that are in here. Now, if I go to design view again, now validation at table level, or sorry, at form level, is very similar to the way you did validation in so basically, where you've done validation previously. So if you go to that box there, and if you go to properties, not the form properties, but just the regular properties, that you will see that actually, if I go to data, right, that you'll see that actually that you should be able to get some validation rules and things like that that you would get in other in the table. Now, so it says here the form should be ready for data entry. The supplier's name, telephone number, number of days must be present. Okay, so we've done that, and it says here that the number of days for delivery must be in the specified range. Now, what is the specified range? Well, if we look up, you'll see that it says suppliers can take 1 to 5 days to deliver products. Okay? So, if I go back here, and I go to delivery days, that what I can do is, if I go to format here, by the way, for a start, and I change the format to, first of all, you can change that to a number, wherever this is. Let's see, general number, right? So general number, and then if I go to data, and I go to validation rule, I can just use my between 1 and 5, okay? And if I save that, I'll be able to test that out by, let's get some validation text in here, not a valid number of days. And if I save that, and I go to view, let's have a look to see what happens if we try to put in a value that's outside the range. So let's say 12, not a valid number of days. So it'll only let me continue if I put in something, so I'll go -1, not a valid number of days. But if I go 2, you'll see that that is, and it doesn't force that error message, okay? So that's the validation for the delivery days, and do we have to, let's just double check here, see if we have to do the validation for the message. Now, that's the only validation, actually, that we have to do here. So it says the number of days must be in the specified range. Valid data should be appended. Right, okay. Now, an error message would appear whenever invalid data has been used. Right, okay. So that's actually everything done, apart from the macro and the append query. So we'll look at that in the next video, but we'll just but before we do that, sorry, the one last thing we have to do is for the 4 fields, one thing that will help us is if we go to all here for a second. Let's go to the very top. Right, at the moment, this box is actually, it says its name is text 0. Now, actually, that's not very meaningful. So I'm going to call it txt supplier ID. So, and I'm going to click on supplier, and I'm going to call this txt supplier. So remember, just in the properties of the actual text box itself. So supplier telephone number, I'm just going to go txt supplier, I'll just say tel. This is the purpose of this is so that we can spot these whenever we're actually doing the append query and make it easier for us to do the append query. And so txt, I'm just going to call it del days, and that's all right. Okay, now, so all we've done there is we've just renamed the text box. So when you click on the actual box itself, in all, the very first thing should be name and change it to txt. Now, so we've got that done for each of those so that they're meaningful, and this will help us when we're doing our macro to be able to find the ones that we actually want. Now, and that means that now we're ready to do our append query, so we'll do that in the next video.